Welcome to the deep end. The deep end. This is deep end number 2, and we're going to go where so many have gone before. Where so many have gone before. And where is that? Well, when people say, "Are you religious?" what is it you usually say? Most of us say, "Well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual." Well, you know, when we talk about religion and spirituality, we get everything messed up because there's really no way to address them today. You have to almost know who you're talking to, know their history, know their background, and where they are today in order to even talk to them about these deep, deep parts of the human being. So what do we do? What do we do and how do we do, I should say? Well, we find new ways to talk about them. Here in this new century, that's what we're doing here at the Deep End. Well, we're back, and I'm here with Marianne. How you doing, Marianne?
I'm good.
It's good to see you. Good to hear you.
Good to be here. Good to be alive, right?
There you go. And this is our second Deep End. And today our subject, and I'm trying to be very clear about our subjects and how we're doing and what we're doing, is religion and spirituality. And I will say, if you hang with us and you listen to our podcast, you will get a new perspective on how reality works. And that's where we're going today, is what is the language we even talk about our existence, who we are, how we are. And those languages pretty much are spirituality and religion. And we're going to take you somewhere that's even deeper and show you something about what these terms really are about and hopefully give you some idea of what they mean. Now, when we look at the past, we have some pretty clear understandings of what these words mean. I mean, well, actually, we don't really have clear understandings of what they mean. And I say that because what I'm talking about is if you look up religion, seriously, if you look it up, and I ask everybody to do that at some point, if you look up religion, it turns out what it is a whole thing of belief in God. As one, and I'm reading off the internet here, these are different definitions. The belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. That's how most people understand religion. And when you ask them if they're religious and they say they're spiritually, what most are doing are rejecting that. Would you not say that's...
I would agree, yes.
You know, and it's an amazing thing when you think about it. Also, it's defined as a particular system of faith and worship, a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. And, of course, you can go on and on. We can go to Wikipedia, and at least they have the sense of saying that there is no scholarly consensus over the definition of religion. Conventionally, a religion, and they have that in quotes, is any cultural system of designated behaviors and practices, worldviews, texts, sanctified places, ethics, or organizations that relate humanity to the supernatural or transcendental. Isn't that interesting? Tell that to a Buddhist. And they would reject that because the fact is, when we get to religion, it's kind of all messed up. And we're going to be, as I said, talking about that today. And the other piece is, what do most people say when they're not religious?
I'm spiritual.
I'm spiritual. What is the spirituality thing? What is this spirituality thing? Well, most people, when you go, and I'm going to Wikipedia here again because, to be honest, it's a pretty cool thing, what they've done on Wikipedia, and even the correctives and the footnoting and who's put into them. But traditionally, spirituality refers to a religious process of reformation which aims to recover the original shape of man. How's that feel, Marianne?
Wow. I have not read that. So
maybe the whole transgender movement is becoming man. I'm sorry, I digress. But it's oriented at the image of God. Oh, there's God. Oh, my gosh. Now tell that to a Buddhist. Do they have spiritual practice? And this is exemplified by the founders and sacred texts of the religions of the world. Now, I'm going to suggest something interesting to y'all. I'm going to suggest that we can talk around these all day, and we can argue over them, and we can, when I printed out this thing on spirituality, it came out to over 45 pages, and over half of that was footnotes and references.
Wow.
Think about that. Think about that.
There's a lot of people writing a lot of things on spirituality.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. They're writing on spirituality. And, a lot of the articles come out of like Psychology Today because of what that means and how it comes to mean that. I'm going to suggest, and I'm going to suggest strongly, and I'm going to first give you a little bit of my resume of who I am. I've spent 35 years in parish ministry and 45 years as a minister. I was originally ordained by the Universal Life Church. Anybody remember that? I was in the Coast Guard, and I got my my ordination through the back of Rolling Stone magazine. Cost $1. But I was fine.
That's very spiritual.
That's very spiritual. I was very spiritual from the beginning. I heard you could get tax reduction if you did that, but it never worked for me. And I also went to, eventually after my own crossing the psychedelic seas and everything else of the 70s, went to college and majored in psychology, and then got a degree in Masters of Divinity at Vanderbilt Divinity School. And then I went into ministry, which we're going to get to the churches. Oh my gosh, that's a whole aspect of it when we get into the religious and spirituality side. But that's a whole other show that we'll do. So I've also been a regular meditator. I learned TM, and I will say I think all meditations are equal, and there are many ways to fall into oneself. But I've been a regular meditator, and not just of TM, but I've learned many other practices as a more shamanic type of minister than anything else. But I've been practicing that for almost 40 years now. And so I've had my spiritual practice, and I have my religious stuff. And Marianne, that was how we met, is on your spiritual front, if I'm correct.
Correct, yeah. I was looking for a spiritual advisor.
And we became spiritual allies, which I think we all are anyway, and we'll do a show on that, and that's going to be called The One. Because in the end, that's where all of my basic beliefs and assumptions collapse. And it's very empirical, and that's part of what we're trying to do here at the deep end, is get empirical. What can we say? What can we actually know? And how do we come to know that? And how do we be honest with all of it? So, here's my suggestion. Inigo Montoya said something very good. He says, we've got to go back to the beginning. When everything gets confused, we go back to the beginning. So, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the words like religion. What is religion really? I'm very serious here, really. Well, religion comes from the Latin root religare, and the word religion wasn't even used until like the 13th century. I tried to find out what word was used. It was traditions. Church was referred to as the assembly. The word church didn't even happen until we get the King James Version, and then the word church emerges. So we have to look at this word. What is the original word? And it's religare. And religare actually means in Latin to tie, to fasten, to bind.
Interesting.
It is pretty interesting when you think about it. So religion is that process, I am suggesting, that binds us to basically the dead. And what we're talking about is, and this comes from a guy named Michael Guillon in a book on Hedy Honigman's Forever, I hope I'm quoting this right, that perhaps memory itself is that which binds the living to the dead, accounting for what I've long accepted as the religiosity of memory. Okay, so I want you to think about religion then. Religare is that which binds us to the past.
Well, and also into remembering.
Exactly. Well, what are you remembering? The past. You see what I'm saying? So memory itself and religare are about the past. They're about how we remember the past and how we develop a continuity. Who was it that said if you don't remember history,
we're doomed to repeat it.
Amen. Amen. So I think that those things tie into it. Now, I think religion and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. It's as simple as that. You can't have memory is important. That which binds us to what is the tradition, okay? So what is spirituality? In all the confusion, spirituality also comes from a Latin word called spiritus. In Hebrew, it's ruach, which means breath, wind. The spirit, that which binds us to the now. What binds you to life? How would for eons did we determine if someone was alive or not? Not
by their breath.
By their breath. That's exactly right. Now it's brain activity. It's really interesting how those measures change, and we could talk about that ad forever.
Well, that's because we can artificially breathe.
Exactly. So here's the thing. What spirituality is the now. It's all that's happening. It's the presence. It's, so many people see Buddhism as the most spiritual religion because it's really all about being here now. And how do we do that? But, I've known people, they were New Age people who 1 week they were a Buddhist and the next week they were a Hindu and the third week they were worshiping or, they had all these gems around them and the organization of matter and all this stuff. And they had spirituality, but they had no religion. They had no continuity that bound them to the memory of their own tradition. And that's what traditions are. They're communal memories that bind us to these truths. And our spirituality, hopefully, is being informed by these memories. Now, the good news of our time is that we have the memories of all the traditions.
Yes. Because I was going to, as you were saying that, I was thinking, we're all of those things. All of those things need to come together.
That's exactly right. And we're going to do a thing on the world traditions and what each of them do, and each of them bring a piece, okay? If you took all the traditions and you brought them together, they would meet and they would come together. Kind of like if you saw all the continents of the planet and you pushed them together, you see how maybe we were all once Pangaea, the one single continent, and then they split apart. It's the same kind of thing. All those traditions fit, and there's a whole philosophy called perennial philosophy that many of us have heard from Aldous Huxley, but it's developed, and that it relates to that. And we'll be talking about that in future shows.
Well, and going back to the memory piece, too, as we remember that we were all one at one time. That, I think, is...
Amen. Now we're down to the primal memories, aren't we?
Right.
So in those primal memories, how do we get back to those? How do we find ways to find them in our time? Well, that's what this show is about. And I hope already you've seen that religion and spirituality are part of a single happening thing. So now we get into, so what is happening here? What is really going on with this spiritus religare thing? And now I'm going to tell you what I believe from all my studies is happening. And what we're doing is practicing metaphysics. Okay, it's always been that. Religion is spirituality. Religion is the memory of it, and spirituality is the practical living of it in the present. And this is very important for all of us. And I think many of us who are on this journey, that's what we've been doing in our lives, is trying to live fully in the moment, but to remember the great teachings from all the great teachers, the Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and Medicine Woman, and it goes on and on and on. This is why so many of us are not giving up on this metaphysic that is our existence. Now, what does that mean, metaphysic? Well, we all know what a physics is, okay? We all know it's basically, last week we talked about the three orders of wonder. I refer you to show number 1. And that's the level of being is an order of wonder, the level of life is an order of wonder, and the level of consciousness is a level of wonder. And we're going to address those in future shows. But what we're talking about now with this metaphysic is really that first order of wonder. It's how, man, come on, look at your hand. If you're driving, don't look at it long. How did this happen? For God's sake, or for the one's sake, or for your sake and mine, for the sake of our grandchildren. What an unbelievable event we're all in, and how we want to preserve it and dance with it and not confound it. So we have this physics. Metaphysic, the word meta is also Latin, which means after. So once you have your physics, what comes up after it? What does it mean? Now we're at spirituality and religion in its truest sense. The practice of metaphysics, memory, consciousness, okay. Other animals aren't practicing this memory of religare. And spirituality, the awareness of oneness. The word metadata is the data on data. Meta-memory is the looking at your ability to remember. You see what I'm saying? There's a step back, and that's what the metaphysics is. Is this making sense, Marianne?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, good.
I'm right there with you.
Oh, good, because I sometimes don't know where I am. I really don't. And the first step in all of this is an important one. It's one that is important for us to, I don't know how to say it, to get over ourselves. We're going to do a show in a few weeks on the biggest threat to the human family, which I just touched on last week. And the biggest threat to the human family, the way we think. And we're not going to get over the way we think unless we see the way we think is not the way to go.
And to remember what that thinking has gotten us into.
That's right. And that word remember, think about what it means. You get your arm cut off, it can be remembered.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what we're doing. We're reconnecting, and that's so important. So today's song is going to be a song I wrote when I was doing my Native American studies, Wankantanka, and I got to meet with a group called the Medicine Horse Drumming Group at the White Swan Mission. They're part of the Yakima tribe, and I wrote this song which talks about the word. So I'm at Divinity School, and I'm the receptionist, right, for the main office. And this woman comes screaming in, and she's looking for like the law building or math or something. She goes, help me, please, I'm lost. And I just looked at her and said, well, we're all lost, sister. And you know, that's exactly right. We're all lost. Nobody's lost by themselves. We're either all in it or none of us are in it.
Right, because we are all connected into that one.
That's right. And so what we're trying to do is now practice a new metaphysic, a metaphysic that has not yet been formed yet. You know, what we're doing now is rejecting the previous forms because they no longer fit the time we are in. And, you know, a man that I really look up to said one time that we are now looking in our pocket for those maps, the maps that have been passed down from one generation to the other for 1,000 years. And we now find the maps and we pull them out and we find that it no longer fits the terrain we're living in.
They need to be reinterpreted for our times.
That's exactly right. And what we're doing here is cartography. Okay? Now, all of you who've gone through, whether it's called the spiritual revolution, the psychedelic revolution, the love thing, you know, someone said, what happened to all the hippies? Well, what happened to all the hippies is we all became one. Who doesn't want wholesome food? Who doesn't want to, you know, we're practicing yoga, Tai Chi. We're now teaching meditation at the Baptist Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. You see how this is working? It's starting to trickle in at all levels. These new ways, these memories from not just our own tradition, but from all traditions. This is religare. We are remembering. We are reconnecting. This is an important piece. So, is this making sense, Marianne?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense to me, but I've been thinking of these things for a very long time. And one of the things that I am just right there with you is that whole idea of remembering who we are and where we came from and why we're here and making that all fit together in the middle of this craziness that we all live in.
Amen. And I think that we're trying to sort it out. You know, so much noticing has gone on before us, but now how do we sort it all out in the light of what's happening today? And that's, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Amen.
Because there's a real reaction to just want to reject everything from the past, and that's a mistake. Amen.
And that is a perfect segue into what's happening next week, which we're going to go into in deep ways. You know, when we had the original Deep End, a guy came up to me, and I might have shared this story even last week at a restaurant, and said, "Oh, you're that Deep End guy. You know, I don't believe in God anymore." And he said, "You know, the God," I said, "So who's the God you don't believe in anymore?" And when he told me, I said, "Well, I don't believe in that God either." So here's the thing, my friends. Here's the thing, and it's important for all of us. What's this God game? What can we say without a doubt? And that's what we really want in today, and that's what the world is demanding. That's part of the new mythology, is an empirical metaphysic where our religion and our spirituality and our science are all working together. So when that happens, where is God in the mix? How do we talk about God for God's sake, if not our own? Well, we're going to give you some new ways of thinking about God, of loving God, of perceiving and experiencing God within your own mind, heart, and body, as well as intellectually and in our community. Because the old forms no longer fit. The old maps no longer capiche. We are in new terrain. We are in new territory, and only together can we make it. Join us for number 3 on God at the Deep End.